Luke. Richard, it's great to talk with you. How are you today?
Oh, I'm great, thank you. It's been a
Excellent.
busy day, but it's good to sit down and just have a conversation.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's one of those days, isn't it, where, as we were just briefly chatting before we came online, one of those days where best laid plans come unstuck. So we'll just go at our own pace with this. And
Yep,
the
yep,
idea today is we're going to just have a general conversation so that those people that are thinking about attending the December 11 event get a chance to get to know you, the speaker, and more so just the message that you are going to be sharing. I would like to start asking those questions if you would be ready for me to start interviewing you.
go for it.
Fantastic. So the first question I'd like to ask you is, what makes you feel inspired or like you're at your best self?
I think when I see other people who have been, on some really tough journeys through their life, and they communicate a message of comeback or recovery. For me, that's I definitely am most energized when I'm doing my work in that particular area, and when I'm exposed to someone new that I haven't seen and a message that I haven't heard before. For me, that just ticks all the boxes.
Oh, awesome. And we could probably just lead in there. Obviously, it's going to be great to have you as one of the speakers in December 11. Without revealing too much about what your message is going to be about, what is it that is your area of passion? So what sort of topics, what's the thing that is really the driver for you?
Yeah, so I think I'm a recovered addict, and I've lived most of my life with depression and anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
and I've found through my process of recovery that there's certain things that I do that anyone could really do, to just add a bit of what I call mental fitness to their life.
Yeah. Ah, mental fitness. Yeah, great term. I like that. And is that really what I guess that the heart of what your subject will be about and what you talk about as a speaker?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to sort of have a look at, use my experience to sort of give a framework of things that people can do,
Mm-hmm.
to give them some areas where they can do a bit of a spot check to go, all right, well, actually, if I'm not feeling great or I'm not running right, here's some things that I can look at, and some possible causes.
Fantastic. That sounds really interesting. And I certainly understand just from my own personal experience. And I know that the term that a lot of people are using currently is the lived experience. And certainly
Yeah.
my lived experience has been that, life has thrown a few curveballs at me, I have to say, and I've gotten really good at catching a lot of them. But yeah, you get to that point where you recognize that things aren't quite right. And I like the idea that you're suggesting we do a spot check. What I'd like to do is sort of segue into another question. What is the thing what's led you to the project or this passion that you want to share with your story? What's led you there? Share a bit
Yeah,
more
I
about
think
that.
my journey, I suppose, I quite often say I've come out of the closet with a lot of this stuff, and that started in 2007,
Okay.
when Grant Hackett had some fairly public issues,
Yeah.
regarding his issues with addiction,
Mm-hmm.
and there was some really horrible things written about him. Now, it's not to say that he didn't do some pretty bad stuff,
Yeah.
but it really had written him off, as a lost cause,
Yeah.
and that really, that actually hurt me quite a lot, because I feel there's actually millions and millions of people who have a story of recovery out there,
Yeah.
but we really don't get to hear them because most of us keep our heads, we stay anonymous.
Yeah.
And it was that event that really precipitated me sort of coming out. I'm a swimmer myself. I do ultra
Okay.
marathon swimming, which
Wow.
is like 20 days or more. And sort of, so I use that as a platform, to show people that, you can come back from the worst possible state and be something amazing. Not
Yeah.
that I think that
Wow.
I'm amazing.
Oh, I would say first up, since I first couldn't swim, I'd probably drown before I could actually swim a lap. I say kudos to you, hats off to you. Not only just the fact that you've really honestly done some amazing things to turn your life around, which I absolutely applaud you for that. It's very easy to become a victim to the things that have happened to us.
Yeah.
and to keep our heads in the sand and not want to speak out about it. Some of it's shame, some of it's embarrassment, some of it's fear that
Yeah.
we'll be rejected, all of those really irky emotions, and some pretty serious ones at that.
Yeah.
But the fact that you can swim 20 kilometers, really? Oh my
Yeah.
goodness, that is amazing, Luke.
Yeah, and I only started swimming 3 years ago, so it's not something that I've done all my life as a sport either.
I think I'm picking my jaw up off the keyboard here. Wow, really?
Yeah, yeah.
Had you ever swum at all? Like, as in, was it something that you did, or was it this was just like, I think I want to swim?
I grew up on a lake, so like I was very water bound as a child, but it's not like I trained as a sport to become a sports swimmer.
Okay.
I always felt like my water's my happy place. Like even as a kid, I remember we used to go down to the Mornington Peninsula, and I would swim out for the shore as far as I could go, and then just sit in the water and just be there.
Wow.
And it was actually my wife that reconnected me to this fountain, to swimming, and put me on this journey of these really quite ridiculous swims that I do. But you know, they're conversation starters.
Oh, absolutely. Look, honestly, the fact that firstly someone supported you by saying, hey, why not go back to something that you were once before passionate about, or at least it was your happy space. So kudos to your wife on that one. But also for you for taking up the challenge and going, you know what, why not? And look, you never know where your personal challenge will take you from a position of something that, you know, might seem like a nice thing to do that turns into something really mammoth. So that happy space concept is a really important one, to know you've got something that can help shift you out of a place that can be potentially quite negative and quite destructive.
Well, it gives you, I mean, the thing that I know today is that through all of my struggles, and that started when I was 11, was that I didn't have much hope of what a good future could be.
Oh, wow.
And now, you know, part of the swimming and the things that I do give me a different reality. Like I might have bad things happening at work, or I might have other life events that are happening, but I still have this thing that there's something positive on the horizon for me. Yeah. It's when there's nothing on that horizon that we tend to be in the middle of the ocean adrift. You know, I sort of got that message, that thing of every time I think about it, I think of just, you know, sort of on a life raft in the middle of the ocean with no hope of rescue.
Yeah. You hit the word on the head there, that 4-letter word, hope. I honestly feel that it's sometimes at the heart of a lot of our difficulties, that if there is no hope, a sense of hopelessness can really spiral well out of control and take people on all sorts of very dark paths. So, and as you were describing that life raft out in the middle of the ocean, I was almost having heart palpitations, because that's almost my worst nightmare. Yeah. So the idea of that no hope is, we've got to have something, and whether it be ultramarathon swimming, or being, you know, that we're painting artwork, or if we're, you know, helping out at the local community, whatever we're doing, as long as there's a sense of hope, it gives us something.
That's exactly right. You know, and there's lots of different areas where that can apply. You know, it doesn't necessarily have to be. I think everyone. I always sort of thought of hope as something, you know, almost like I don't know, something that was unattainable for much of a time. And now I know that it's somewhat, some part of it, it's a mixture of things. It's like, okay, I'm having a bad time at the moment, but I just trust and I know that things are going to get right. And I hope for that time to come sooner rather than later. And I suppose I just have a bit of a trust in the universe that something's going to, like, everything that happens for a reason. I might not like the reason right now, but it will be clear to me later on. And everything passes. And I think that's the other thing, is that I had this feeling that I was just trapped on the hamster wheel and I was never, ever going to escape. And when I felt like that, you know, it become, you limit your options to how you get out of that to very small, very narrow, and very dangerous ones, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I totally hear that. The hamster wheel is quite a frightening concept in itself, and it quite often can manifest from some of the smallest incidents. And it can seem to be just maybe one thing that maybe we're taking a job that we're not real happy with, but it pays the
Yeah.
bills. And then in the
Uh-huh.
end, we find ourselves kind of stuck because then our living and way of life demands that we have that income to maintain
Uh-huh.
that way of life. And then we become kind of wedged into this sense of apathy. And I find apathy is probably the biggest
Mm.
toxic emotion or emotional or mind state that we find ourselves in. So yeah,
Yeah.
it manifests from the smallest things. That little hamster wheel, she can become mighty big at
Yeah.
times.
And the funny thing is that sometimes you can be there and in this routine, a completely negative routine that you don't even realize until sometimes it's too late, you know. So that I know that, you know, for me, you know, being in that state, you know, I often say that my addiction was accidental because it was. You know, I just fell into it because it was something that took me away from this thing that I was like, I just couldn't bear anymore.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is that I think that these days we're programmed to just go to work, like all the things we just spoke about. I need to earn money to do these things and do whatever, and that's okay, right? Like you can have an unsatisfying job that just ticks the boxes and does the, you know, pays the bills.
Yeah.
But but it's only okay if you're making sure that you're doing things for yourself to sort of balance the ledger. It's a scale, right? Like it's just, if it's like this, then you're in trouble. If it's like that, then you're in trouble. We've got to try and get that balance. The only way you can get the balance is by putting the good stuff in and making sure that you're sort of looking after yourself or filling yourself with the good fuel.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, totally. And I think one of the things that we have a tendency in society to do is almost to poo-poo anybody who puts themselves first. And we have a lot of the memes that float around on Facebook that say, you know, you can't feed from an empty cup or anything like that. We can't drink from an empty cup. So you can't do anything if you're empty. I mean, you can do some things, but it just drains the reserves. And I find I was very guilty of that. And I have a tendency to be more of a giver than a taker. And in that knowledge about myself, I'm more than open to giving. But when someone wants to kind of top up my cup, I'm a bit like, hang on a minute, back off. And yet I don't realize at the end of the day, they're doing that because they see what I refuse to see. And that is, they see that I'm perhaps running a little on the empty side. And it's a bit like the proverbial hug. We all need, like, what, 7 to 12 hugs a day or something to fill the hug meter. It's funny, if you don't get them and someone offers to give you a hug, how you can become a bit resistant. And we need to be aware to really tap into our own needs and be okay putting ourselves at the top of the pyramid and going, hang on, if I'm not okay, then I can't be okay for everybody else. Therefore, I can't help anybody else. And I can't make the rest of the hamster wheel stuff happen in a happy way that I can cope with everything going on. So we do need to put ourselves first sometimes, or a lot of the time.
Well, it's funny. It's just, I mean, when I went into my, you know, when you go into a work situation, we still have this sort of servitude style approach to the way we work. You know, we work huge hours, and no one will clock off early or clock, you know, it's like we've gone past the point of a 9-to-5 day these days. I have email on my phone. It's like I'm on all the time. Yeah. So the time that I'm physically in the office is irrelevant, but we don't have the courage generally to go, listen, I'm going home. I'm going to the gym at 4, or I'm coming in at 10 so I can go to the gym, and that's going to make me a better place. And I mean, it's hard to make those choices. However, you know, when I started my new job, I said, look, this is the way I work, and if it becomes an issue for us moving forward, then, and because I'm not, you know, I'm not delivering, then let's do it. But can we do it this way? And he's like, yeah. My boss is like, yeah, cool. And the good thing is that by giving to myself, by doing things like making sure I'm home to see my kids at 5 o'clock and do dinner and whatever, I'm on at work later on at night. Like, I'm still doing stuff. I'm still active. Nothing's actually changed. Like, my physical presence, and I'm happy because I don't feel like I'm missing out on my kid's life.
Yeah, that's really important. That's a really valuable, I guess, indication of where things can be at if we're in the right environment. And that kudos to your employers for being open enough to allow you to have that flexibility. Because we talk
Yeah.
about work-life balance, and I personally, I've never really seen a lot of that happen. We say the demands of the workplace are quite often there. It's the ability to say, well, I operate my best as this kind of person. This is how I can best contribute to the workplace, obviously within the realms of what the workplace requires. But in order for me to be the best person, this works best, and I can then contribute the best. But there are things that are important to me, and I'm very much about having, the family first. A lot of my friends have got little kids, and they're often apologizing to me because they can't do something and it's like, no, hang on, family first. Those kids need you. I'm a close second, maybe because something we were doing was a priority, but no, family first. So it is about balance, isn't it?
Absolutely. Always about balance.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think the next question that we had coming up that I thought was really valuable to learn from you is, what's important to you about social change, and what social cause do you represent or align your message with or feel strongly about? We've sort of touched on that, but I'm interested to peel away a few more layers on that one.
Yeah, I think obviously I'm very much aligned to sort of the mental health message and people being able to communicate and talk about it. Very much about action and organisations that take action to change the dial. I mean, I feel very strongly that we don't need more people to raise awareness. We need more programs at people's disposals. So, I'm very lucky that I work closely, and I am an ambassador for Movember, and I do speaking for Beyond Blue, and I go out and share my story and to anyone that will listen, basically. And for me as well, it's about one of my project at the moment is a men's group where guys can come and talk about what's going on and get some mentoring from someone who's actually been through the same sort of stuff.
Yeah, awesome. That is great. I think mentoring is something that we underestimate the power of it. We're not all necessarily, qualified maybe as social workers or psychiatrists or psychologists if those qualifications matter. But we're all, I suppose you could say, we're all qualified in life. We've all experienced something, and the message, something that I've experienced in my life, is something that may benefit someone else. And I tend to go with something that I'm pretty sure it was a Facebook meme that I read somewhere that was like, my 150%, no, I'll flip that. My 75% is someone else's 150%, meaning even if I'm having a half decent day, whatever's going on in my half decent day, to someone else, that is a fantastic day. And if I in some way can impart something from my life experiences that helps to mentor somebody else to experience a 150% day, and that is a good day for them, then that's what it comes down to. I think mentoring, we underestimate the power of it. If we can contribute more to help someone by putting our hands out to help someone up, it can just be the simplest of words, the simplest of feelings. My tendency is to try and look at the word normalization. I spent a lot of my time not feeling normal. I felt like I was very different and very much the outcast, and that I didn't fit in, and I was very isolated. So even though I had a select few friends, I wasn't one of the in crowd. I wasn't one of the it girls. I was definitely on the outside, but there were lots of layers and ramifications to that. And I found that for me, it was almost important that I feel like that someone would at least reach out and mentor me or help me along. Did you find that you got mentored at all while you were younger?
No, not really at all, and I don't think I was necessarily in the right place to be able to receive it. But definitely, my recovery has been exactly that. I got sober in the rooms of AA, and that whole process works that way. That someone works with you to help you, and and they've been through it, so they know, they know exactly what you're feeling. And what I came to realize was that I suffered from something called terminal uniqueness, in that I thought that I was the only person that could possibly ever have felt that way about these things. And and the connection that you have when you've got someone who has been through a very, it's not always it's not the details of the thing that's the same. It's like depression. Doesn't matter what caused it. It's just that you feel it, and the things and the behaviours and the way you feel are all the same. And when you can talk to someone about that, and then they go, yeah, I actually know, and here in your heart, I'm pointing at my heart here, that they understand because they've walked that path. There's a connection that is immediately created through that process, and I feel that getting well is being able to reconnect the dots or the threads that we've pulled out of that jumper of life and left them on the floor.
Totally relate to that. It really is about feeling like there's somebody who gets, and then the whole terminal uniqueness, in a sad way, I do laugh at that, because yes, been there. And the sad part though is that oftentimes we really do get caught up in the details of what separates us, rather than recognizing that collectively we're all, like, the emotions are pretty much not standard, but we feel what we feel. The details might separate the experience, but overall we feel a whole mixture of emotions. And when we're honest with ourselves, which can be really tough, we can say, yes, I have felt that. I've had recent experience with an independent medical examiner who wanted to label me with quite a significant mental health diagnosis, which, and quite openly, I really wouldn't care if I was. I mean, I'm not going to be bound by that. I wasn't insulted by it or any of those other, negative defensive emotions. I was concerned with how quickly he wanted to label me with something he had 66 minutes of my time, and he suddenly came up with this really, really inappropriate diagnosis. And the sad part with the diagnosis process that can sometimes happen to us is, if we're diagnosed with something, that label can feel really, really icky and can stick with us. And it's not until we humanize the emotions that are associated with it. I do get down in the dumps. I do get frustrated. And I've had a really tough time the last 18 months with this car accident. But to be labeled with this horrendously, very serious medical diagnosis in the space of 66 minutes, when he didn't even bother to carry out any of the normal diagnostic tools and tests to demonstrate that I actually was fitting into that criteria, was really, I'm okay with that because I'm really mentally strong. But imagine somebody who's not, who's feeling really frail.
Yeah, and that's obviously, you sort of touched on a really important point. It's the process of discovery. Like, I can never tell someone, like, I can see someone, I can see how they behave, I can see their relationship with substances, things and whatever, and say that's not healthy and that's addictive behavior. But I will never label someone an alcoholic or an addict or whatever it may be, because it's not up to me to apply that label. In some instances where it's, you've got medical diagnosis, it's that, yes, they need to go through a process to work out what's wrong. But you also need to come through it when you've got these things. It's like, I don't want to be that. And if I don't want to be that, then I sort of put myself into this place of denial for, I can't think of any other term, and therefore I don't face the problem. Because I'm not that. It's definitely not me. I'm strong-willed. I can handle all this stuff. I'm not weak. And this is a thing that definitely I think affects a lot of men when it comes to mental illness, is because it's like, you are weak. It's perceived that you're weak and you can't. It's not. I'm not allowed. I'm not allowed to be weak for my family. I have to be the one that bears all the pressure, and I have to be the one that and the whole weight of the family rests on my shoulders financially and whatever else. and I don't have anyone to talk to it about. I've just got to suck it up and get on with it, you know. And it's not, and the follow-on effect is well, we know what that is. It's 1 in 6 men, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, six men. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. No, you're exactly right. It's the whole social expectation. And I tend to be very wary about anybody being labelled as anything, although strictly speaking, sometimes we need a label to help us to identify something so we can then work with it. But
Yes.
beyond that, it's very scary when people own the label. If we are diagnosed with something and then just we clasp onto that like it's the salvation, I worry sometimes that people become almost obsessed with at least that identity, because it means that sometimes we become a little scared of what other possibilities are there. And when you face mental health issues, we need to be more open, as opposed to being labeled and then kind of fit into a little box, because it takes away the uniqueness of who we are if we're suddenly labeled with something which is, and as I discovered, this IME who decided to plonk a great big fat label on top of me, I might look, if it was true, I'd go, okay, I recognize those symptoms or signs as being me, and I'm thankful someone found it here. I can deal with that now. But it was so categorically wrong. And, you know, luckily, me being the strong personality that I am, I have a background in psychiatric nursing as well. So he didn't know. I don't think he knew that anyway. So I was able to understand where he was going with his diagnosis. And I was literally shaking my head. But as I said to the GP later, it's like, I'm really lucky that being the mental strength that I have, I was able just to brush that diagnosis aside, knowing it wasn't relevant to me. And yet, how would it be if someone else who's not so strong, who's going through a vulnerable stage, feeling like they've just been labelled with something really horrendous, because they become, it's almost like they own it, because that's the only identity that they've got. And it can be really quite sad.
Or it's something that is so appalling to them that they can't. I remember, you know, one of the first instances where someone, a doctor suggested that I had an issue with addiction, and I just worked out of like, I'm not a, you know, firstly the thing that I'm like, I conjured up reasons why I wasn't.
Okay.
Right. But I also was like, I'm not that, you know, I'm not a junkie, right? Like, I'm not the guy that everyone demonizes anyway. Like, I just, you know, I still go to work and I do all those things, but the reality is I was still the same, right? My behaviors were the same.
Yeah.
And you know, we definitely, I mean, I had this experience where I went to talk at a doctor's conference, and you know, I recognized from that process and talking with the doctors afterwards that, you know, we need to do, as a group, we need to do more to work with them so that they understand things. We need to give them better tools. And in particular, we need to do things to support them psychologically. Because one lady came up to me and she goes, I work with people, I see people all the time that suffer in the way that you did. And I've never seen anyone come through it, and I didn't believe they could.
Wow.
You know, and so you're sitting going, how do people deal with these constant, you know, the constant stress of seeing people who are struggling with their mental health, not really doing, and the system's not always designed to help them find the problem, or if they're not ready to find the problem yet, like if you're not ready to go on that journey, all the amount of, you know, antidepressants and whatever else they give you will only be a bit of plaster over a gaping wound anyway. They definitely helped me in my times when I've had them, and they've been great. But it only worked when I did the work.
Yeah, absolutely, and I totally agree that there's a time and a place for all sorts of medicine. I'm thankful that I live in a world where medicine's so readily available, no matter what type of medicine that is. I think, as you say, we need to have a more open conversation in society generally with the healthcare providers and those that are the recipients of the care, so that there's a better understanding. And I guess my example of the IME that I spoke to, the psychiatrist that he seemed very much unaware of the implications of placing just a rather heavy diagnosis on somebody that he didn't know. And in that sense, I think it's really important that we understand someone's story, which is why I love what we're doing in terms of sharing stories. Because and I actually posted about this on LinkedIn by saying that there's no way that that particular doctor, and I don't care how many years of experience he has, it's irrelevant in one sense, because I also have years of experience walking the planet, and I'm a different person. I don't want to be categorized in a set box. I want someone to hear my story and to understand how I think, and to hear the context of where my story fits into who I am. And if that diagnosis then fits, then fantastic, let's work with it. Let's use it as a tool. But for me, I just found it was quite ironic that we have this sense of detachment. And as I worked as a psychiatric nurse, some of the things I saw were actually really quite disheartening. I got out of the industry after about 4 years because I realized that there are those that have a very, very distinct mental illness situation that may either be genetic or chemistry or whatever the thing is that causes a breakdown in the brain function. And that's unfortunate, and it's really sad. And I do feel for people that are in that situation. But then there's also depression, which can be triggered by a variety of different sources, where we can otherwise function very normally, but depression because we don't know how to cope with a certain set of circumstances. And if we weren't in those circumstances, we'd probably be really good. So I call it situational depression for a reason, because I believe personally that if anyone was going through someone else's situation, that situation would probably trigger a bout of depression. It's contextual and it's understandable within the context. And I think, as you say, if we could have more open conversations between the medical practices and the health providers and the recipients of those, with understanding each other's story, it'd be a far more inclusive conversation. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. Like, without a doubt. I know that, that first doctor I just mentioned, then, one of the things he did was tell me about your life. Like, and then he went, well, no wonder you're no wonder you're not in a great spot, right? Like, after he was the one who effectively, diagnosed me after 30 something years of depression and anxiety. All that time I went along life just thinking I was broken, and that was that was my lot. The reality of it was I probably could have done something many years ago. But on the flip side, on my 38th or 9th birthday, I realised who I was, and I'm now incredibly happy and comfortable with myself. So if the price of my journey was what I have today, I wouldn't really want to do it again, but I'm happy with the price that I paid.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. It's, at times it can be very, very difficult to be comfortable about history and look at it and go, there are times when I wished I had never gone through 90% of what I've endured in my world. But I also know, without an ounce of doubt at all, I could not possibly be the person I am. And I'm very comfortable and very proud of the strengths that I've got and the personality quirks and all of the uniqueness that I come with. I'm proud of that, because I know I wouldn't be that if it wasn't for that amazing, horrendous, crazy journey that was my life. Yeah.
And it's funny, I had this sort of reaction that I think I picked up in many of the rooms. Like, when I really identify with something that someone's saying, I laugh. Because for me, it's like, it's not funny. It's just, Yeah. I mean, it's quite funny. I remember once, I think I took my mum to an AA meeting with me, and there were some pretty rough stories, tragic stories, and lots of laughter going out in the room as we were all, and she's like, "Why are you laughing?" And I'm like, "It's not funny. It's understanding. It's like,
stress relief in a lot of ways. It's like, oh my God, it's actually somebody out there gets this, and it's hilarious when someone gets it.
I can't believe I thought I was the only one,
Yeah, I totally hear that. And, I always think we all operate on a spectrum. You know, we've got
Uh-huh.
this end and we've got this end, and there's somewhere in between. And for the most part, you've got your extremes on either end, but there's this collective group of us somewhere in that spectrum. We're all there. We're all in it. And we can all pass from one end of that spectrum to the other at any point in time.
Uh-huh.
Life can be so unpredictable. I, for one, could never have anticipated, because you never can, that I would have had a car accident, you know, like it's now probably closer to 20 months ago now. And 20 months on, the changes in my world have been ridiculous, and not all positive, but I'm determined to not let it get to me, even though dealing with the insurance side of it and that medical examiners is not a bundle of fun, I'll give you that much.
Uh-huh.
But at the same time, it's all part of that. It challenges you to understand what are my own internal resources, what's my personality style. And I'm a terribly, very much fixed on. I'm a fixer. I don't like having problems. If there's a problem, I'll fix it. And I'm someone who's destined to always do that. I don't tend to ask for help because I'm more than capable. Thank you very much. And it's a bit of stubbornness that goes there as well.
Uh-huh.
But it's that whole capability factor, and it's a little bit sad to make the reference to the cotton wool kid syndrome that we referenced in society several years ago. If we don't allow our kids to fall over, get hurt, and it's very tough, I'm sure it is, to see someone you care about to go through something that is hurtful. But if we don't allow them to understand what hurt feels like, they oftentimes are never going to understand they have the resources within themselves to become stronger because of it. So I don't begrudge going through difficulty, because I know that's what's created the inner strength and the resourcefulness. And I tend to find that, you know, I hear what you're saying about, you know, it's not when we're in a situation where you see or hear that other people are going through it, that whole connectedness, that irony that makes you want to laugh out loud, saying, oh my God, I'm not the only person going through this. It's really reassuring in a crazy kind of way.
Uh-huh.
I have one more question to ask you, and
Yes.
I'd love to know, what 3 things do you think everyone should practice?
Yeah. I call it number 1 is the daily gift for me, and it's something that you do for yourself every day. You know, that for me, that takes the form of my swimming training most of the time, but it's time out. I'm disconnected from the internet and everything else along with it. I think number 2 is to just, you know, set goals that have nothing to do with your work. And have everything to do with enriching your life. And I think the 3rd piece is get out and be a part of nature. You know, we don't spend enough time outdoors, and I know that you know, there's something really special for me being out in the middle of the Port Phillip Bay when I'm swimming. And I just come back with an energy that's incredible. And it might be that you like the mountains or you like something else, but you know, get out there and explore the world. There's lots of stuff to find that'll give you good vibes.
Yeah, totally agree with that. I had the privilege of growing up in the country, and I'm not really destined to be a suburban kind of person. It's suburbia or even the urban lifestyle really doesn't rock it for me. And I really crave the great open outdoors and the sound of water, and, you know, being around the birds and just all of that. And I know that is very nurturing and very nourishing to be able to just have those moments.
Yep.
Yeah, cool.
Yep.
Fantastic. Well, it's been an awesome conversation with you, Luke. And we've bounced around from all sorts of different conversation topics. It's been really interesting. So, Luke, is there anything else you want to share with us?
No, I think we pretty much hit the nail on the head, and at the risk of extending this conversation through to the rest of the day, I'll just say thanks for your time and thanks for the opportunity to talk.
Absolutely. It's been a real pleasure, and I look forward to December 11 as well. And also, thank you for your time, and I hope the rest of your day goes swimmingly.
Yes, thank you. Hopefully too.
All right. Thanks, Luke.
Cheers, bye.